It's nice to see you all in such a high number. So I assume that there's lots of interest for today's presentation and today's topic, which is Synology for Apple users. Today's spot webinar is going to actually show the integration of Synology ecosystem into Apple ecosystem and how actually our solutions and our products are complementary to Apple products. So this is the goal of today. And today's speakers are Mr. Luca Manestar. Luca is our official media partner, and he's also the author and owner of Black Void blogs. I'm sure that some of you have seen these blogs today, by today, and he has one in English, Black Void Club, which is very popular and gets lots of visits from all around the world. And also Black Void Tech, which is essentially blog that is run in Croatian language. Luka is a native Croatian. And this is with the sole purpose to attract more users and more readers from this Balkan part of the world that speaks Croatian or understands it. Along Luka is myself. I am Ismar Hota, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a sales coordinator at Synology GmbH, which is the German subsidiary of Synology. I'm talking to you today from the German office here in the city of Düsseldorf. And without taking more of your time, today's agenda is going to cover these four main topics. They will not go necessarily in this specific order, so to say, but these are main concepts. So I want to first demystify this idea about Apple safety. Then I want to talk about how Synology can be used as addition to the Apple ecosystem. Then Luca will kindly share his testimonial basically and talk about how he uses Synology daily in his work and how he integrates it in the ecosystem of Apple. Luca is also a big Apple fan and he uses all of Apple products as his daily drivers, basically. And then finally, we want to discuss more how Synology and Apple actually work well together and how you can use these as complementary these devices and solutions from Synology as complementary uh, features to your existing Apple ecosystem. So, as I said, I want to demystify the safety of Apple ecosystem. Now, I'm not saying that Apple is unsafe, quite contrary to that. But from what I've heard and from what I know, there's this urban legend basically that Apple is safe and it cannot be hacked. So if you have an Apple, you don't have to worry about keeping a backup. You don't have to worry about having a spare copy of your data and so on. Now, as I said, it is safe, but if you do a little bit of desk research, you can find lots of headlines that actually speak about times when Apple wasn't on its par and it wasn't really the safest. So I've decided to show and share some headlines that I could find, and you can see here that despite the hype, iPhone security is no match to NSO spyware. So you can see that it can happen. Researchers also say that there's a massive Mac OS bug that was exploited by hackers in 2021. I'm sure it was fixed by now, but it did happen. Also, there's a famous case between FBI and Apple where FBI requested Apple's assistance to unlock an iPhone during an investigation, and Apple refused it because they didn't want to expose their security. However, actually, FBI eventually found a way to access the device without Apple's help. And this was a little bit controversial at the time. Then also a little bit older, from 2016, Pegasus, developed by NSO Group, was a sophisticated spyware that effectively infected iPhones, and so on and so on. And then maybe to finish it off, Forbes also mentions to always update your Mac, because there's actually a worst hack in years. This is, I believe, also from 2021. So I hope that I grabbed your attention a little bit, and that you have a clearer understanding of that although Apple is safe and a very good product, it is very important also to keep a spare copy, or to think about infrastructure that can protect you, that can protect your important data, and that for many years to come, you will not lose your important memories, like your photos, or more importantly, like your bank details and so on. So at this point, I wanted to share with you this ease of use of Apple and Synology NAS, of how you can use it essentially to access your files, both directly on the NAS and from uh, macOS computer. And also, in a sense, you will get an idea that although this is storage, so you can basically spare your storage direct on your Mac OS computer that you have. You can also use it to create an additional copy, essentially, to create a backup. So I have created a short video earlier. So let me share that with you at this point, and I'll show you what I'm doing. So here you can see the DSM interface. DSM is Disk Station Manager. This is the name of our operating system. It's a web-based operating system that you access directly through the browser, in this case through Safari. So I'm using Apple browser. And what I do is, in the URL, I type the IP address of the NAS, and this is what I'm greeted with. This is the beginning screen, basically the desktop of the Disk Station Manager. You can see it's quite familiar. If you ever used any desktop application, you can see it, how it works. So here now I'm accessing the file station, which is essentially like the Finder on the Mac OS. Here I can see all my shared folders that I have created. You can see on the side some that I have. And now I will show you also control panel. So basically this is a place from where I can control everything that is going on my NAS. I can create different users. I can do all sorts of security things and so on. But for today's sake, I'm going to show you some shared folders. And here's where I can actually create new ones, manipulate, delete the existing ones, and so on. So you can essentially see everything that you saw on the file station, so the Synology version of Finder. Plus, you can see I have two encrypted folders that you could not see on the file station. So if you also want to encrypt something, if you want to keep it very secure, for example, your uh, scans of your documents, your bank details, and so on, it's possible also to encrypt individual folders. Here I'm also going to file services, and here you can see that I have SMB enabled already. And there's other services like AFP. I'm going to enable this as well. And then I'm going to go and click apply. And then I want to show you that, you can also access the NAS directly through the Finder. So one way is you can take the IP address, and you can map your NAS on the Mac computer. So now we are going to go to the Finder. And then when you go to networks, you can see I have it already from before. I have my NAS from home already mapped. And you can see I also have a Synology router at home, so I have two devices that are already mapped on the network. So if you didn't do this, you could actually map it yourself. But because I have done this already, I'm simply going to connect to my NAS. And then once I do that, I need to log in. So it'll ask you how do you want to connect. So I'm going to connect via my administrator account. So you type in the username and the password of your administrator account. And then you can see the folders that you saw on File Station, you can now see directly in the Finder. Now, as I said, you can use Synology NAS for storage. So I'm going to show you a simple use where I create a folder and I add a file. So I'll go to the Synology folder for today's purposes. Now, on the NAS side, I'm going to show you the file station. And so you have the same view. Let me just fix the view here. If I go to the same folder, you can see we have the recycling bin here. And then if I create, for example, one new folder, and I can call it webinar. And if I go back to the Finder, you'll see it's here. Once we refresh, you can see the folder. So now that we have this, for example, if I take a file and I'll put this picture, I'll simply drag it. And if I go back to the NAS side, you can see I have it here. So you can also work directly on the NAS. As you can see, I can open the picture, some random picture, and also here you see the same. So this was just a simple example of this. Also, you saw the recycle option. So if I delete something, it will not get permanently deleted. Now, as an administrator, I can see the recycle folder because this is the permission I gave it, so I can retrieve back deleted items. So if you accidentally delete something, it's not gone, even though you did it. So this was just a simple case of using a NAS directly over your network. But maybe you're already asking yourself, what if I'm not at home? Uh, can I still use the NAS, or is this just the device that I can use when I am at home? And the answer is, of course, you are able to use the NAS also remotely. There's several ways how you can do this, but today I want to keep it very simple, very user friendly, and I want to be in this line with Apple ecosystem where there's not a steep learning curve where everybody can do it. That's why I want to talk about Quick Connect. Basically, Quick Connect is an idea where you give a unique name or a unique ID to your NAS that you own, and you check against the Synology relay server that only sees whether you have this ID as really a unique one. And if you truly do, so for example, if we say Synology loves Apple as our quick ID, quick connect ID, and if it is really a unique one, then we could access our Synology NAS remotely, whether it be through the web browser like you just saw, or you can also do this through all the other applications that I'm going to show you later on today and other services that you use, whether it be on your iOS devices or your Mac computers. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to quickly share with you another short video. And I'm going to show you how you enable Quick Connect and essentially create one if you don't have it. So you would go again to your NAS, and we need to go to external access, and then there is a tab, Quick Connect. So we need to enable Quick Connect and give the unique ID. And actually here automatically it will check whether the ID is a unique one. And if it is, that's all you have to do. Basically, if you type then quickconnect.to/ your unique ID, which I said could be, for example, Synology loves Apple, you would essentially be able to directly connect to your NAS over the internet, and then you can log in with your administrator account. Here you can see also secure sign-in, which I will talk about later, and I'll show you how that works. But for this purposes, I'm going to sign in with a password. And essentially, at this point, I'm connected to my NAS remotely without the need to use the local network. So it's that easy. And also during the first installation, you will be prompted to create immediately your Quick Connect ID. So it can also be easier than this. So you will have a wizard-like feature and you will be able to do this yourself. From there, you can access your NAS without the need to, for example, adjust port forwarding rules, without the need to fiddle with your router, without the need to create DDNS, any of that stuff. It's very simple and very easy, and it will always work. Now that I talked about this ease of access, I want to go back to our first point of discussion, and that was the topic of safety and hacking. And as I said, you can use Synology NAS to help you in those situations to make sure that these adverse activities that are going online are minimized and that your data is protected and kept safely. One of the ways that you can do this is if you follow Synology's suggested 3-2-1 rule. And essentially what 3-2-1 rule is, it means that you have 3 different copies of your data, and these copies should at least be located on 2 devices. And we also recommend that you have 1 more copy placed on some external place. So for example, if you have 2 different locations, maybe 2 different offices, if you're in an office setting, or an external drive, or perhaps you want to keep something additionally on a cloud like iCloud, or for example, Synology C2 Cloud. In that chain, you would have done the 3-2-1 rule, and you would minimize the potential loss of your data. So today we are going to go in this fashion and try to explain this concept further and how it is integrated with Apple. And for that purpose, what I'm going to do now is hand over to Luca, who is going to show you the ease of integration, first of all, with Apple Time Machine and how you can create backups of your macOS to the NAS. And then we will discuss more about Synology's native business backup application called Active Backup for Business Suite. And by having this, I give my word to you, Luca. Luca, feel free to share what you would like to say.
Thank you, Ismat. Well, first a little audio check. You can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, essentially, as Ismat already said on several occasions now, the integration between Apple and Synology is growing over time, slowly. Apple's macOS or iOS are not always on the top of the list when new features are coming about. And I'll talk about more in detail what I mean by that. But it was recognized, obviously, by Synology that the Apple, or better to say macOS specifically, user base is growing over the years. And it's basically unavoidable to not support macOS as an operating system when it comes to Synology products in general. Whether it's a It's a router, it's a NAS, it's mobile applications, or certain features, right? So considering that we're here to talk about in general how Apple integrates, or better to say how Synology can help back up Apple devices specifically, but there are also many other features that Synology in its portfolio offers from a software standpoint. We'll definitely start with backup. Now, the reason why Time Machine here is because usually when you talk to an Apple user and when you talk about backups, Time Machine comes up like instantly. So I'm probably sure that most of the Apple users that are here on this webinar today are aware of Time Machine, but just in case if you're not, Time Machine is a built-in backup system inside macOS for a number of years. And it's a very easy one-click solution or several-click solution that will allow for a peace of mind in order to perform a specific backup to basically any external hard drive that you can connect to your Mac, to your laptop, to your desktop, doesn't matter. Now, there are some setbacks compared to some other modern backup solutions, but for the most part, Time Machine does work. It backs up the operating system, the applications, the data, everything. Also, it's very tightly integrated. So when you basically have to restore something, which we will not demo in this particular, because it will just take some time to make a backup, I will definitely show you how easily it is to configure it in a matter of minutes, but we'll obviously not wait for the backup to complete. But the whole point of a backup is essentially to have it always at hand, because as Isma said at the beginning, macOS, no matter what people say, it's not hack-proof. Computers break down, hard drives fail, so having a backup is essential. It's regardless what your platform of choice is, and in this case, if it's macOS, it's fine, but you just have to have a backup. So without further ado, I will just do some screen sharing. We'll do actually a live demo, and just to see how and what prerequisites are needed in order to configure Time Machine Backup on a macOS device towards a Synology NAS in this case. Now, Synology supports Time Machine protocol, or basically Time Machine as a feature for a number of years. And from my personal experience, that was actually one of top 3 reasons why I chose Synology back in the day, like 2009, 8, something like that, because it actually did support Time Machine. So let's basically see how simple it is to configure this. So I'm just gonna screen share here, and we'll just switch over here. There we go. Okay, so now we're on a Mac. This is a Ventura operating system, so the currently latest, although WWDC is actually today, so we'll probably see the announcement of the new Mac OS. Regardless, Time Machine, as I said before, is integrated inside the operating system, and in this case, it's inside System Preferences. So under the General section, there's the Time Machine option. As we can see, typically Apple-like, a single button add backup disk solution. And if we click there, we'll see that this Mac is picking up 2 potential partitions, drives, in this case, a network drive. The local drive has a different icon, which is a green directly attached icon. So this is a network drive. And it's picking up the names of my several of my NASs here in the local network that I have. And it's picking up the specific names. These are names actually on the Synology NAS regarding their destination. So we're just gonna hop back quickly into DSM just to see how these destinations are actually configured. Now, if we just go full screen here, and yeah, so this is basically control panel inside DSM 7, 7.2 actually, this one. So the first thing that we need is basically a shared folder, which will be created on a volume of your choice on the NAS itself. We need to give it certain permissions. So user credentials that will be used from the Mac side in order to connect to this folder. That user needs to have read-write permissions. And one more thing that we need to do is basically once we create the backup folder, we need to go into File Services and then AFP section and enable, AFP, enable AFP services. And under the advanced section, under the Bonjour protocol, set the Time Machine folder. There are several checkboxes here, whether or not Time Machine will broadcast on SMB, so Samba protocol, or Apple's AFP. Now, this is the AFP from a client standpoint. AFP server feature has been deprecated on macOS, but considering that we are actually connecting to the NAS as a client, this will basically be needs to be selected, and the Time Machine folder setting needs to be set to a specific folder that we created, and in this case it's a simple folder called backup. Now, what this effectively means is that the backup folder will start broadcasting on the network as an available Time Machine destination. Now, if we go back, let's go here. Now, if we go back here, this is essentially what we're seeing. So on the server, K2SO, one of my favorite Star Wars robots, androids, is a backup folder. So this backup name that we see here is essentially a name of the folder. We just click that we want to connect. And once we enter the DSM credentials here, and connect, there we go. So we successfully authenticated. macOS is offering us the encryption of the backup. Now, this is something that needs to, I mean, it's obviously an option, but if you're concerned about backup, you can definitely encrypt a backup from the client side, which is also a good thing. So we just need to enter and re-enter a password, and as soon as we click done, the backup will finish configuring, and the entire macOS will start to begin to backup. I won't do that just because there's no point in actually viewing the progress bar. So that's how easy it is to set up a default Time Machine support, which is obviously, even using the latest and greatest macOS operating system today, as it was 10 years ago, it's still supported. Now, just a quick side note, Apple doesn't actually officially support third-party backups to via Time Machine to certain network devices, etc. But so just be wary of it. From my personal experience, the corruption of the backup actually never happened, not even once. Luckily, I wasn't in a position to need to extract data from the backup that often, but I do backup tests on occasion. And the only gripe that I have with Time Machine is that over time it tends to get slow. I mean, in general, it is a bit sluggish when it comes to backup, as opposed to another backup method that we're going to talk about now, and that's basically Synology's active backup. Now, that's the second slide, so I won't just switch screens now. I'll just stay here and essentially show you what I mean. So the if we look at the active backup for business, Now, Active Backup for Business has been around for a while. It's a license-free platform by Synology. It supports Windows, macOS came a little bit late, and Linux as well. Certain Linux distributions. Knowledge Base has an updated information on that. And also a great asset, which I won't talk about too much, is as of recently, Synology NAS backups are also potential targets. So you can, if you have multiple Synology NAS, you can use Active Backup to actually snapshot entire Synology NAS, including backup data, DSM, like everything, to a secondary NAS. I'll basically show you real quick how that works. But under the PC and Mac section, we have a macOS tab, and here we have listed all of the Macs that are currently connected, number of versions, when the last backup was successful, and you can also see the overview tab here that all the backups are actually going well. There are actually no fails or warnings. Active Backup for Business also supports deduplication, so there will be a significant, as you can see here, compression when it comes to actually deduplication when it comes to backups. So it's also a great asset to preserve space. And once the Active Backup is configured, essentially how it works is that the client is configured on the Mac, installed. The only thing that you need to do is enter the IP or FQDN of the Active Backup NAS, so NAS that is hosting the Active Backup, and basically connect. When that happens, that's the reason why I'm skipping it, because it's literally a single screen. And as soon as that happens, the device will be populated right here. So the task will be automatically created under the list, and the appropriate task will be configured. Obviously, you can edit and do time scheduling, trigger backups, whether or not you want the backup to, how often you want it, how many versions you want it to have it, whether or not you want a specific version to be locked. You can do that from the user interface as well. So multiple options, but the main reason why I prefer Active Backup over Time Machine, although I'm an Apple user, right? So what Ismar said, professionally, I'm personally an Apple user. Unfortunately, I'm using Windows from a professional standpoint, but okay. But what the main reason why I'm advocating for Active Backup for Business is speed. Now, compared to Time Machine that I said is a little bit sluggish, Active Backup for Business is really fast. It does really well. And the deltas after the initial backup are real quick, especially if you have 10G. Even if you don't have 10G network connectivity, it will do a very, very quick delta backup, including also deduplication. So the deltas that are actually going to be backup are really, really small. Obviously, it depends how much interval has passed between backups and how much the actual data delta is in size. Another feature, or better to say asset, on the Active Backup side versus a time machine is because what I mentioned before, maybe you didn't pick it up, is that you can do backup locally or through the internet. So for instance, even if you have remote Macs and Macs and NAS are not actually on the same geographic location, but actually do need to communicate through internet, whether or not it's a VPN between them or directly exposed to the internet, you can also configure Active Backup to do a remote backup of your Mac that way. So that's something that Time Machine cannot do. And it's actually configured to do local backups, LAN backups only. So speed and versatility of the Active Backup suite, specifically for the Mac, is definitely something that's going in its favor, so to speak. So from from a administrative standpoint, which is something that we're looking at now, we also have something that it's called Active Backup for Business User Portal. Now, once you do the backup, this is basically the portal that you will see and that you will need to use in order to restore certain data. Now, the Active Backup for Business, in this case, in the upper right-hand corner, you can see tasks. Now, these are tasks that we've seen before. So 2 tasks for Macs and 1 for Synology NAS. So this is actually a task that has done a full 720 NAS backup to this particular Active Backup instance. And this way I can basically just choose which volume I want to mount up in order to get the data. So let's see what happens when I mount up my Mac Studio. On the bottom here, you can see the timestamps when the backups have occurred and how backups are actually cleared as time passes on. So only specific weekly backups are reserved. As you can see, these numbers 1 represent a number of backups, number of versions, and obviously dates. And depending on which specific location I'm at, I can have also multiple dates and on the same day, for instance, when the backup has occurred. Regardless of that, as soon as the day has been selected, on the left-hand side, we can see and we can use the navigation in order to get to certain data. For instance, we have some installation files here for DSM, and really easy, we can basically either restore them to the original location from here, or basically download them if this is, for instance, being accessed by a completely different machine on a completely different location. So for instance, even if you do have a backup and and you're maybe working on another Mac that has no connection to this, maybe your laptop, and you forgot, but you do have actually backed up, you can actually use Active Backup for Business portal over the internet and basically connect directly into a backup backup version and extract or download that particular file that you need, or multiple files. Now, I've been using Active Backup for Business for several years, and ever since the Mac support came out in beta, I haven't had any issues with it. I will just finish up with this section with one specific note that Intel-powered Macs are supported, as well as Apple Silicon, including M1 and M2. There is a very detailed knowledge base article, or even on Blackwood's site, there's a first-hand hefty article, lengthy article describing the entire process of this. And there you will see a specific topic that needs to be done on the Apple Silicon. And that's basically lowering security on your Mac in order to allow third-party support the way the Active Backup actually works. Some people might have an issue with that regarding security, but at the moment, it is what it is. And from the audience, I mean, in general, when this was rolled out, I've noticed that this is the main issue that most users are having, or maybe even a little bit reluctant to go and use Active Backup for Business. But from a operating perspective, it works really well. It's super fast, stable. I've done a number of restores, and also, to end on this note, the Active Backup for Business does support bare metal Mac recovery. Essentially, it's using migration assistance from Apple in order to connect to your Active backup and then basically restore your Mac. Unfortunately, that's too lengthy and involves resetting and rebooting and whatnot, so we haven't had a demo of that, but articles are available on it, and if you have any questions about it, do let me know. And I will give it back to Ismet now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Luca, for the detailed explanation of everything. I hope that it is clear for everyone and they can see the ease of use. Uh, now, I'm going to jump into the section that I said how we integrate Synology and Apple as one ecosystem, basically how our solutions can complement Apple ecosystem. And I already saw some questions and some interest about Synology Drive. So I'm going to discuss here one by one different solutions that are relevant for today. And I'll start off with Synology Drive. So essentially, Synology Drive is envisioned to turn your NAS into a private cloud, so to say. So you become the sole owner of your device, your data, and you can also use it in a cloud fashion. So what this basically means is that you can extend Synology NAS to synchronize your device, your Mac OS device, and you can then access all of the data that is on your Synology NAS at the same time from your Mac OS. So you can work directly on the NAS, you can edit files, you can use the options of versioning, and essentially, if you want, you can also use it to back up your data using Synology Drive. This was before more popular and more mentioned before Active Backup for Business was able to do Mac OS backups. This was essentially the only way you could use Synology's native application to make backup of your macOS. But today, Synology Drive is more envisioned for synchronization on macOS platform. It took some time until Drive 3.2 before we were able to implement the feature set that was available in the past only on Windows, and that is basically on-demand sync. So now this is also possible on macOS. And what this essentially means is if you have a large amount of files, big files, videos, some projects that you are working on, they don't have to essentially be always synchronized and occupy the storage memory of your Mac OS device. But what you can do is you can view them, and only when you decide to use them, basically when you click to open a certain file, this file will be downloaded at that point. So this conserves your storage in case you don't need to use all of the files at the same time. And this was something that was always asked for, and our developers have finally been able to answer to this feature. Still, what is not possible is to select folders, for example, on your phone and synchronize them, something that is possible on Android. So if there are questions regarding this, uh, keep them for future. You can submit it as feature request, but this is still not something that is possible. Another application that I want to talk about today is Synology Chat. So this again is more office friendly application for somebody who would like to implement a private feature, a private platform for professional communication. Synology Chat could be just an option for you. So like all the other applications developed by Synology, Synology Chat is also a web-based application. However, there's also a client that you can install on your macOS, as well as a chat app that you can install on your iOS devices. And this will essentially allow you to communicate with other DSM and non-DSM users. You'll be able to share files, and basically this transition in communication will be very easy and very simple. And moreover, for admins, you don't require any phone numbers to create a user account. Everything is done directly on the NAS side. Now, in this Office bundle of complementary apps, I want to focus a little bit more on Synology Calendar. So again, Synology Calendar is a web-based app, but unlike most other apps for Synology Calendar, an Apple user basically doesn't have to download any client, doesn't have to download any application, but they can fully integrate it into the default macOS and iOS calendars. So it's very seamless. It always basically works, and it uses the default CalDAV protocol, so you can actually create your calendar, you can update it and sync it. And the main advantage is that you will be able to be the owner of your Synology calendar. The calendar will be yours. It will not be saved anywhere else except on your NAS, and you are the sole owner of this. Uh, Now that I have covered this more businessy side, I want to soften it up by talking about Synology photos. And I saw there's a lot of questions coming, some confusion, how it can be used, how you can back it up. So I think the best way to go into this topic is to again allow Luca to explain how he uses Synology photos. Maybe he can show us a little demo directly from the phone that he made, and maybe you can discuss a little bit more about how the backup function works, because there was a question I saw in the chat, and also how it can be integrated to be used on other Apple platforms as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Just before we go into Synology Photos, considering that you've mentioned the Synology calendar, I do use it personally, and I really like the seamless integration. And I've been using for years and literally forgot about it. And it really works well, integrates into macOS as well as iOS. Native calendar application, the synchronization is fine, sharing, everything. So yeah, that really kudos to that. But moving on to Synology Photos, yeah. Now, again, coming from an Apple side of things, there might be some confusion considering that Apple also has an application called Photos. Yeah, so I will emphasize Synology Photos when I mean actually Synology Photos, but just bear with me with all the photos word coming in now. Personally, I've always been a Photos user, so I've used Apple Photos. But essentially, if you actually actively used it, especially with all the services and cloud services and Google Photos and whatnot, people are kind of expecting Apple to move into that direction of seamless access to your photos as well. Now that has happened a while back with in introduction of iCloud and iCloud Photos, but as most Apple users will tell you, that space and storage is also an issue, considering that both Android and iPhones have a very complex camera system, which can produce very high resolution photos and videos. Keeping those on device or actually clearing them off and then shipping them to the cloud is something that over time might be an issue, right? Especially if you have multiple users in your household, in your family, that can add up real quick. Now, the reason, another reason why I'm actually not using their iCloud feature, but actually on-prem, is because I don't want my photos being in a public cloud. Simple as that. But that also limits me to either having my devices with me, which is my iPhone. So if something happens to my iPhone, if I haven't backed up, I don't know, several weeks of photos, there can actually be lost unless I actually made a backup on a Mac desktop. And also Mac then has to be backed up as well. So something that we already talked about. And that's the main reason why I'm actually shifting towards Synology Photos. Now, just a quick overview. Synology Photos is not, it's a brand new DSM-7 platform, but it's basically a product of a combination of PhotoStation 6, and Moments. So it kind of cannibalized and took both best features of both, although some professionals are still having an issue with Synology Photos, and I can understand why. There are several features that are still missing and that work really well in Photo Station, the previous version. But hopefully Synology is listening and they will essentially expand Synology Photos as a platform. But for the most part, I'm not a heavy user, especially not a professional photo user, no. But for me, Synology Photos, the main reason why I use it is a really, really seamless backup of my iPhone photos and videos. That's the number one reason why I'm actually using Synology Photos, sorry. Another reason is because Synology Photos is a NAS-hosted, Synology NAS-hosted web application. It allows me to access all of those photos everywhere and share with everyone. And I'm not limited to Apple ecosystem, and there's no connection to the cloud. As Ismar already said a number of times, when using a Synology solution, you're owning the content, and that's actually what I want. I want it to have it accessible everywhere, but on my terms. So best of both worlds, so to speak. And that's another reason why I've decided to give Synology Photos a go. Now, from a user standpoint, it really works really well, even in a multi-user environment, for instance, a household, for example. And I would just like to show you a demo. It's about 4.5-5 minutes long, but I will talk through it just so we can see firsthand on an iOS device how this actually works. So hopefully I won't shut anything off. And let me just activate that demo. Okay, so we can see this, right? Yeah. So this is obviously an iOS device. And on this iOS device, there are obviously Synology Photos application. So this is a default iOS application, Photos, which has several photos inside it. You can obviously zoom in and whatnot. But compared to that, on this screen, we can see, I'm just pausing periodically. On this screen, we can also see about half of all of the mobile applications that Synology offers for some of their applications and platforms. And included in those is Photos Mobile in the second icon in the second row. So if we open it up, this is essentially Synology Photos, right? So Synology Photos, unlike on the mobile platform, is a as I said, web-driven application. So on your Mac, you will use a web browser, not a dedicated application. And only on the mobile side do we have iOS and Android apps. So inside it, the user interface fairly simple. You can obviously browse the photos. You can view them by year, by month, by day, or in this case, for instance, that what we're actually looking at is just an overview, and the speed is really well. Now, I'm just going to pause here a little bit and tell you that this is actually configured to work over the internet. So this is not local communication, although I am on Wi-Fi, but I actually am accessing the Synology Photos is configured to work over the internet. So this is exposed over the internet. And apart from the camera roll view that we've just seen, we also have folders. In this case, there's a folder called covers. So this is, for instance, my black void covers that I've done. And you can definitely see that zooming in and browsing through the photos is really, really smooth. What I can do here in this particular case, I can maybe select several photos and maybe make an album, right? So albums in the past, so we'll just call an album, let's say, social. Now albums in the past duplicated the content. So all the data was actually in the camera roll, and the albums were duplicated. In this case, these are virtual albums. So as we can see here on the album view, this social is basically presenting the content, but these are not duplicated photos. So this will not go against your network storage, which is also a plus, something that PhotoStation didn't have. Now, apart from this, obviously here I have several photos, but if we recall before, I have certain photos on my phone which are missing from here. And now we'll see actually how we can add them. Obviously on the fly, you can also expand your albums by adding new photos. But let's see how we can actually add photos from the phone manually, or later on, not manually, but through a photos backup. So the backup option inside Photos application allows you to either backup new photos, that means from this point forward, whichever photo you will take, or backup all photos. Now I will choose backup all photos because I'm missing all my local photos. We can set up the destination, whether or not it's just going to back up through Wi-Fi or 4G. Enable also notifications when backup is done. As you can see, the counter is counting down, so photos are actually backed up. Those are those initial 5 backups, 5 photos that were missing. So Photos application will also work in background. There's no need to actually have an application active. And now those photos from the camera roll, from the phone camera roll, are basically backed up. Obviously, if I scroll here, it's missing from the covers folder, as we can see it. So there are no photos here. So it might be confusing for the first time. And obviously here in albums, if we go into recently added, we can see the 5 images added at the top. So they are here. Now, just initially what I wanted to show you is there's no confusion what happens. We can obviously select them and move them, or basically delete them, edit them, but we can also move them, not from this particular view, or we can use the iOS share button and basically send them any way we want, when we can also add them to an album. So the main question is, where are the photos now, right? Considering it says recently added. But if we go on the main screen and just refresh it, we'll see a default mobile folder. Obviously, you can create a specific folder where you want it, but if you don't do nothing, you just leave default settings, this is actually what we do. We get a specific folder that has subfolders based on dates and months and days, and then the content is actually inside it, and we can select the images and move them to a specific folder. So if we now back up and go into the main screen inside covers, we can see the 4 photos. The 5th one was on a different day, so it's missing. We can basically see them in the covers, and obviously again add them to any album, any new album, or even share them. So if we just pause a little bit here, now on the bottom here, there's a sharing button. I haven't actually covered that in this particular video, but the sharing, I've seen a couple of questions here about sharing. Now, sharing when it comes to Synology Photos needs to be configured from Synology Photos. Now, some veteran users or previous users that were using Synology PhotoStation had a bit of an issue, and I do understand it, because previously the method of working with permissions and whatnot was not actually done solely through the application itself, but actually on the file level. Now, this is not the case here, and I would definitely suggest in a multi-user environment to simply use Synology Photos web UI. Each user gets its own account. Nobody can see each other's content, and you can use the sharing option to basically share with other DSM users or public. There's also a public sharing feature as well, so you don't have to actually have a Synology DSM account in order to access photos. But just to avoid the confusion, the sharing feature is done through the Synology Photos. So That way, it will be very easy to manipulate and set permissions for specific users, how strong the permissions are, whether they can contribute, whether they can just view, etc., etc. So hopefully, in this short demo, you've seen how the main elements, which is auto backup, and backup really works really well. When the application is in the background, it will obviously be slower, and obviously if you configure to backup only on Wi-Fi, it can it will only back up when you are actually on Wi-Fi, so not out and about. So keep that in mind, but it does work really well. So hopefully that's it. I think we're back here then. And back to you, Ismail. Ismail, I can't hear you. Not really sure if somebody else
I was
can.
muted. Sorry.
There we go.
As I said, very informative, very detailed. So thank you again. And I see a lot of interest from the audience. So I'll try to wrap it up a little bit quicker because we are going past the planned time. And I apologize for that, but I don't want to also stop it because there's lots of interest. So going back again to some very business features. Synology NAS can also be used as essentially as an NVR, and you can run your surveillance on it. How this works is through surveillance station application that is directly running on the NAS, and we actually recommend our users to use Synology Station client, and also, of course, you can use our dedicated app for the phone called DSCam. And together, by integrating it with over 10,000 different IP camera models, you can run very professional business-like surveillance deployment, whether this be your home environment or your office. I won't go into too many details. This is a completely separate topic. We could discuss for hours on this, but it's. I wanted to just mention it that it works very well. It can be easily integrated also in the iOS and macOS environment. Last but not least, when it comes to individual applications and solutions, I want to discuss a little bit about using Synology's mail server called Mail Plus. Essentially, what this is you can turn a Synology NAS into a private mail server. We call this Mail Plus. And how it works is you have all the data and all the ownership of your inboxes and your mails. So you are the sole owner, and you only have to buy a single perpetual license. So you buy it once, and it's yours to keep forever. Why I'm saying this? For many businesses who have a mail solution with ongoing license fees, these fees can really add up over time, and Synology can be a good solution for you. On the slide, you can see how the web interface looks like. It's very reminiscent of Gmail. However, I want to stress here that it's fully compatible with Mac's own email application. And as I mentioned before, together with the integration of the calendar, with the integration of Synology Chat, and seamless integration with macOS, you can create a really professional office experience, minimize your costs, and on top of that, have ability to create backups. And as you saw, also surveillance. So you have this all-in-one solution ready for you. And a beautiful thing is it is very well integrated into Mac ecosystem. To wrap things up, you saw that you can use all of these or most of these solutions on from your phone, from your iOS devices. And here you can see almost 20 different Synology applications that you can find directly from the App Store, and you can download them and you can use your credentials with your usually with Quick Connect, and everything should be working and you can take advantage of all of the features. Moreover, there is also integration with Apple Watch with certain applications. The one that I would stress on the mostly is secure sign-in. Essentially, this is a way of multi-factor authenticating your logins, so you can have it set up in a way that when you're logging in, that you get a prompt message on your Apple Watch and you approve essentially a login into your NAS. And with this, I would like to wrap up this part of us giving the theory. I see there's a lot more questions, and I will come back to them in an email afterwards because we are running out of time. But as promised, there's also a raffle, so there is a possibility for today's participants to win one DS220J. And in order to participate and to play the raffle, uh, you have to visit the link that I provided. You can find it here. And uh, please give your consent to participate. And on top of that, I kindly ask you also to subscribe, if you haven't done so already, to Balkans channel and to Hungary channel, where the webinar will also be placed. And last but not least, because this webinar is actually for the Balkans region and Hungary, you should be or have an address in these markets in order to play the raffle. For Balkans, because definitions vary from one place to another. So basically, you have to be either from Romania, Bulgaria, one of former Yugoslav countries, or from Albania in order to play. So if you have a shipping address in one of these places, please take your time and do this. And then I'll go through the summary quickly just to wrap things up. And I'm going to just briefly announce the winner, and then we will contact you directly afterwards. So basically, as I said, the idea of integrating Synology and Apple together is the fact that Synology can be accessed across all your devices and across all the platforms. And you can have easy integration, whether it be on your iPhones, whether it be on your Mac OS. Also, as you saw, Apple TV supports some of the uh, applications and also the Apple Watch. With the selection of the third-party Synology applications, you can actually see how our operating system was inspired by the user experience and user interface from Mac OS and iOS. This is no secret. We actually internally look up to Apple's philosophy and we try to replicate it in a way. And as you saw, it is very easy for you to switch from Apple and use Synology platform. And I hope that with today's presentation, I've helped some of you and inspired some of you to use more Synology applications. If you have more questions, you can reach out to me directly. I will send a follow-up email to everybody who participated today. And I want to thank once again to Luca for today's support and all the hard work. I hope that the participants liked what you showed to them. After the webinar, there will also be a review, so you can leave a comment. You can tell us how you like the presentation, if you want to give some other suggestions and so on. And now I'm going to close the raffle. So please stop filling out, and I'm going to just use a random selector, and I'm going to select one lucky winner. So give me a moment.
Oh, I hope it's going to be me.
So I wrote in the chat, if there's more people with the same last name, don't worry, the correct person will be reached out to. So congrats, Mr. Korpas, and until next time, and thank you very much for your participation today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.